I will officially call our meeting to order. It is 9:30, April 15th, 2019. And if we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by my Vice Chair, Commissioner Akers.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and good morning again. We will start the meeting with our budget workshop this morning. And Christina Sackett, you head to the podium and we'll get the budget workshop started.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. This workshop provides an overview of the fiscal year 20 budget and offers the board an opportunity to ask questions and discuss the proposed budget. As part of the annual budget process, the agency's finance staff has met with each member government's finance departments to review the proposed budget and answer any questions. Tampa Bay Water was formed by the 6 member governments to work together to solve the region's water supply problems, reduce adverse environmental effects of excessive well-field pumping, and eliminate rate differentials. The member governments desired the agency design, acquire, construct, operate, and maintain water supply facilities to ensure that an adequate supply of quality water will be available for all customers served by the member governments. This slide shows that over the past 20 years, the agency has built a complex, diverse water supply system worth over $1 billion. In 1998, the member governments determined the water needs and environmental concerns of their citizens would best be balanced by vesting water supply functions in the agency for the purpose of supplying water in such a manner as would give priority to reducing adverse environmental effects. Tampa Bay Water's complex water supply system uniquely blends river water, desalinated seawater, and groundwater. Due to a decrease in groundwater pumping of more than 50% since 1998, the adverse environmental effects have reduced, as shown here. The member governments established a uniform rate, eliminating rate differentials. This more effectively enabling the agency to accomplish its goals and purposes. The uniform rate consists of 2 cost components, a fixed and a variable component. The fixed cost portion for each member is calculated based upon their previous fiscal year's percentage of demand times the budgeted fixed cost. Monthly, each member is billed 1/12 of their fixed cost portion, and then this percentage is trued up at the end of the fiscal year. The variable cost portion is calculated for each member based upon their prior month's consumption times the annual variable rate. The annual variable rate is determined by the variable cost divided by the budgeted demand. Annually, management works on developing a budget that aligns with the 5 goals of the agency's strategic plan: maintaining the water supply and delivery system reliability and sustainability, increasing efficiency of all agency operations, maintaining financial stability and sustainability, maintaining open, collaborative relationships with member governments and other stakeholders, and upholding a culture of health and safety. Some additional factors management considered when developing the proposed fiscal year 20 budget include the forecasted water demand. In fiscal year 2020, we are projecting an increase in demand of 2.3 million gallons a day, for a total demand of 180.8 million gallons per day. Increasing pay-as-you-go funding to minimize future debt issuance. We have increased this funding by 1.7 million over last year, for a total of 7 million. Implementing the demand management incentive programs, and focusing on maximizing efficiencies and using rate stabilization if needed to minimize any impact on the net revenue required from water sales. So I am pleased to say the proposed fiscal year 20 budget maintains the uniform rate of 2.559 per 1,000 gallons, making fiscal year 20 the 9th consecutive year at this uniform rate. The agency's budgeted water demand is projected each year utilizing various demand forecasting tools. These projections take into consideration relevant factors such as historic rainfall patterns, demographics, population growth, and conservation measures. Source scenarios are established to maximize the use of available surface water and manage groundwater resources to meet permit requirements and achieve environmental recovery. Source selection for the fiscal year 20 budget includes groundwater from the 10 consolidated wellfield permit of 82.8 million gallons per day, groundwater from other sources of 27 million gallons per day, operating the surface water treatment plant on an annual average of 62 million gallons per day to maximize the seasonally available higher river flows during wet weather months and water stored in the regional reservoir, plus using the desalination facility for an annual average of 9 million gallons per day of desalinated water. Management evaluated outsourced activities, increased responsibilities, and new requirements, and determined the benefits gained by requesting the 5 positions on this slide would provide better value for our member governments. Some of the benefits include allowing technical staff and management to focus on their core responsibilities, reducing some outsourced costs, addressing increased tasks from new requirements or project needs, and enhancing the agency's communications and data analysis. The agency's anticipated cost to provide quality water to the member government consists of 2 components, the fixed and the variable. The agency's variable costs fluctuate annually according to the projected demand and supply source. In fiscal year 20, the variable costs equal 14.6% of the total anticipated costs. The fixed costs account for the remaining 85.4% and are broken down into 6 subcomponents: renewal and replacement projects, operations and maintenance agreements, pay-as-you-go funding, operations, and debt service for the member acquisitions and bonds. As you can see, debt service makes up 44% of the total fiscal year 20 cost. This percentage has decreased over the past few years, but with outstanding debt totaling $1.285 billion, it continues to be a large piece of the budget. The fiscal year 20 costs total $182.4 million. Variable costs, which consist of chemical and power, total $26.7 million. The fixed costs total $155.8 million. Total debt service for fiscal year 20 is $80.3, which is $70.1 million for bonds and $10.2 million for the members' acquisition credits. The operations and maintenance agreements for the surface water treatment plant, Keller, and the desalination facility is $14.5 million. Renewal and replacement planned expenditures is $6.6, pay-as-you-go funding is $7 million, and costs for operating the agency total $47.4 million. This cost includes routine capital purchases, non-routine capital purchases, professional services such as engineering, implementation of the demand management program, funding for the long-term feasibility, plus the Florida Friendly Landscape Program, personnel services, which include wages, employee insurance, FRS, and the agency's merit program at a 4% calculation rate, plus materials, supplies, repairs, and other services. Staff has worked diligently to develop a budget that worked towards meeting the 5 goals of the agency's strategic plan. The fiscal year total 20 costs are $182.4 million, and this number is needed to calculate the net revenue required from water sales, which is the primary source of revenue for the agency. Staff then projects the adjustments. These are typically other revenue sources the agency is projecting to receive, such as surcharges, interest income, and grant income. Additional adjustments are made from transfers from other agency funds, such as the Renewal and Replacement Fund, or the Rate Stabilization Account, if needed. In fiscal year 20, these adjustments total $13.1 million, and we did not need to use any of the Rate Stabilization Fund. Adding the total costs and total adjustments provides the net revenue required from water sales of $169.3 in fiscal year 20. Water sales are the total cost to the member governments before any acquisition or water quality credits and is separated as I said, in fixed and variable cost components. Tampa Bay Water's Capital Improvement Program is a 10-year plan and project portfolio. It provides a multi-year forecast of anticipated capital expenditures and funding needs to ensure effective management of the agency's capital assets and aligns with our long-term master water planning process. Annually, the plan is updated to add new projects, update project costs and schedules, and to update the anticipated expenditures and funding needs. The board approves the upcoming fiscal year's expenditures and key stages of each project during the project implementation lifecycle, including design and construction contracts, primary environmental permit applications, and property acquisitions. The Capital Improvements Program includes projects from multiple sources and interacts with other agency programs as shown in this diagram. For example, the projects from the 2018 Long-Term Master Water Plan update have been added as individual projects this year to the Capital Improvement Program. We have projects generated from internal programs, such as the Renewal and Placement Program, and regulatory and safety-related conditions. Projects requested by our member governments to meet specific needs, such as the Southern Hillsborough County Expansion Project, are also part of our program. The updated fiscal year 20 to 29 plan includes 93 projects in several stages of their life cycle. All projects included in the Capital Improvement Program go through a vetting process that includes identification of the project's needs, including determining if it aligns with one or more of the agency's strategic goals, scope of work and project requirements, capital cost estimates, project implementation strategy, risks, schedule, and staff resources needs. This chart shows a breakdown of the capital project types and shows that over 2/3 of the current projects are related to renewal and reliability and replacement. These projects are needed to renew or replace existing capital assets or infrastructure that have or will reach the end of their useful life within the 10-year planning cycle. They are prioritized on criticality and the remaining life of the assets. The remainder of the projects consist of improvements to our existing infrastructure, such as roads and buildings, water treatment improvements to address water quality, safety, compliance, and new water supplies. There are several major projects that are active or will be active in the fiscal year 2020. At the Eldridge Wild Well Field, we have 2 major projects that will be in the bidding stage in fiscal year 20. The first is to replace the existing overhead power line with an underground power line. The second is a renewal and replacement project to replace motors, pumps, well houses, and all electrical components. We are also underway in completing design of the Starkey Well Field pumps and motors, which will replace motors, pumps, 2 well houses, and all electrical components. We are moving forward with the completion of route studies for the Southern Hillsborough County Expansion Pipeline Project. And finally, the updated plan now includes the feasibility projects approved by the board in December 2018 in the Long-Term Master Water Plan. Over the next 10 years, the fiscal year 20 through 29 Capital Improvement Program anticipates expenditures of $266.8 million. Currently, the agency has on hand $40.3 million to apply towards these expenditures, leaving a funding balance need of $226.5 million. Staff is anticipating through the 10 years, a total of $90.5 million will be met with future pay-as-you-go funding and grant opportunities. Adding this to the funds on hand will provide a total of $130.8 million, or 49% coverage of the total projected expenditures. This leaves $136 million of other future funding needed. Currently, staff is estimating $94 million will be needed in fiscal year 23, and $42 million will be needed in fiscal year 26. Annually, the amount and timing of funds needed for the program is analyzed. Staff regularly connects with our financial advisors to discuss different funding strategies and scenarios that may take advantage of debt service amounts dropping in fiscal year 29 and fiscal year 33 to try and level off the impact of any debt issuance. Annually, the board approves only the Capital Improvement program's upcoming fiscal year projected expenditures when it approves the agency's upcoming fiscal year operating budget, which we will be requesting in June. The fiscal year 2020 projected capital improvement program expenditures is $19.7 million. These funds are on hand, and this chart shows the funding sources. Additionally, board approval will be requested for each project at key stages during implementation. In June, the board will also be requested to accept the entire 10-year capital improvement program, allowing agency staff to plan and budget for future resources. As stated, every fiscal year, the board will be asked to only approve the upcoming fiscal year's projected expenditures in the capital improvement program. Just to go over the highlights one more time of the proposed fiscal year 20 budget, anticipated demand of 108.8 million gallons per day, 5 additional staff positions, bringing the full-time equivalent count to 155, total cost of $182.4 million, no use of rate stabilization funds, pay-as-you-go funding of $7 million, net revenue required from water sales of $169.7 million, a variable rate of 0.4028 per thousand gallons, and a uniform rate of 2.559 per thousand gallons for the 9th consecutive year. The next steps will be in early June when we advertise for the budget public hearing, which will be at the June 17th board meeting. During the public hearing, we will solicit any public comments on the fiscal year 20 budget and provide a brief review of the proposed budget. Subsequent to the hearing, the board will be asked to approve the fiscal year 2020 operating budget, which includes the fiscal year 20 capital improvement program expenditures, and accept the full 10-year capital improvement program. This concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any of the board's questions regarding the proposed fiscal year 20 budget.
Do I have questions? Yes, Commissioner Eggers?
Morning, thank you. You always do a great job with that. Just, you touched on it briefly about the debt structure in 2029 and 2033, I think, reducing. What is the kind of the current level of debt, and what would they reduce to? Just
The current level of debt with both bonds and members' acquisition credits is roughly $80 million a year. In 2029, the members' acquisition credits will be paid in full, so it'll drop down to 70. And then in fiscal year 33, the debt has been structured that it reduces by another 33 million in fiscal year 33, so it'd be down to 37.
And that doesn't assume any new
That is correct.
new water plan, if a new water source plan that we come up with, that would be added.
Correct.
It would include everything on the pay-as-you-go and any small capital improvement program. This is all just
This
debt
is all
that
just the current debt that we have at this time.
okay. Anything else besides the new water plan that you anticipate in that, say, in that next 15 years?
The only other projects that I anticipate that aren't included in the capital improvement program could be any decision the board makes on any of the water quality
Good.
projects.
Yeah, water quality, okay. On the stabilization rate being 0 this year, I think we added some last year. What's the decision-making process that you go through to either add monies to that? What's the implication of
To add monies to
the
it at the end
stable-
of the year, or to use the funds during budget?
Well, to add it during the year, I guess.
The rate stabilization account, when we get to the end of the fiscal year, we look to see what unexpended funds the agency does have, and then that's when we bring it back to the board, and we either make the decision to put it into pay-as-you-go funding, so we can use it in the future, or to put it into rate stabilization for the board to be able to use it to minimize the rate in future years.
And the stabilization rate fund, thank you, that you feel we're at a good level right now? Good.
Yeah, the management has decided to try and maintain at least a level of 10% of the budgeted total costs, which would be roughly around 18 million. We currently have about 22, 23 million in the account.
And so the fixed rate that you're talking about, we don't anticipate that. Well, obviously not this year, but with that rate in place, probably protected for a little bit. Come on. I mean, I want to make sure that we have enough in there that we can anticipate some fluctuations without.
Yes, we definitely have enough in the rate stabilization account to be able to look at the future years, minimizing or maintaining the current rate.
That was pretty good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Eggers, you asked many of the questions I was going to ask, but I do want to follow up on one. So no new water source water projects are in the capital improvement program right now.
Currently in the capital improvement program, it's R&R and the project for the pipeline to South Hillsborough County.
Is in there or not in there?
It's in there. The pipeline cost is in there because at the time that we had put the plan together, that was the more costly project between that and looking at the Sharp alternative. So we went in there and put in the higher cost project because I'm conservative when it comes to the money, so.
How much is the pipeline project?
We have in the capital improvement program 93 or 94 million.
94 million. And did that increase our debt when you include that?
That is part of the 136 million that we're looking at in the 10-year program that we are projecting needing within that 10-year time. And that would be part of the reason that we would need 90 million in fiscal year 23 or sooner. But every year we look at it and see what pay-as-you-go funding we can use to move it further and further out.
And the total debt, including everything, is still at 1.2 billion?
Correct, including principal and interest, it's 1.285 billion.
And if you can just restate, so by 2033, we're going to pay $80 million a year up to 2033, right?
Up through fiscal year 28, and then in
28.
29, it goes down to 7 because the member acquisition credits will be paid in full.
It'll go down to 7 million?
70 million, sorry.
70, when it goes from 80 to 70.
Right, and then in 33, it goes down to 37, and then in 2038 is currently when all of the debt is expected to be, all of the current debt will be paid in full.
2038, unless we embark on new projects or water quality.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? I don't see any further questions. You always do a great job. Thank you. And now we're going to move into the public comment portion of the meeting. We have quite a few speakers. And I just want to make this statement before we start. The Tampa Bay Water Board of Directors welcomes comments from the public about any issue of concern. Opinions provide valuable input to the board members. However, we request that public comments be directed to issues, not directed personally against any board member or staff member. This provides mutual respect between the board members and the public. Any person wishing to speak at the time must have a completed speaker card submitted at the dais prior to the beginning of the meeting. Each speaker shall have a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board on any matter on the agenda. When addressing the board, please state your name, address, and agenda item on which you wish to comment. Thank you. And I believe there is a timer. Is there a timer up there so they can see? And there's also a timer back there. Our first speaker will be David Geddes. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. David Ballard Geddes Jr. I live on Georgia Avenue in Palm Harbor. Again, Article 6 of this Constitution states, "The laws of the United States shall be made in pursuance thereof," stating all debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be held as valid against the United States under this Constitution, and that this Constitution is to rise as fact under Article 3, Section 2 of this Constitution as equated in consequence of appropriations made by law legislatively from Article 1, Section 9, thereby establishing, counterfeiting a de facto despotic government based on water, using this Constitution as a medium formulating, manifesting its laws capriciously contrived on false facts and built-up findings. This Constitution states that no bill of attainder, no letter of marque, no ex post facto law shall be passed in Article 1, Section 10. Yet oddly, unfortunately, this Constitution in and of itself is a bill of attainder, is a letter of marque, is an ex post facto law. Truth being held, in actuality, this Constitution is an invasion declared hypocritically being legislated both by Great Britain and the 12 tribes of Israel, Israel having written the Declaration, self-declared as mercenaries, written themselves as tax-free in the 14th Amendment thereof, birthing Hamilton's Second Constitution based on water, in hopes of giving rise to the de facto government of medieval England as equated. In reality, both Great Britain and Israel are both totally unworthy of heading up a civilized nation as declared in the Declaration of Independence, as self-proclaimed, and I stand against this type of constitutional hypocrisy being engaged in this room here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark Lutho, our next speaker.
Mark Lutho, Largo. Can't believe what I heard. Sustainability, maximizing efficiencies, friendly Florida landscapes. Why, it won't be long and those firecracker plants out there are going to be mutilated. Oh, what a joke. And then I see energy management program, and over here, your demand forecast, member demand, regional demand management, member government water conservation, and then with that BP oil spill, oh, we couldn't sell our water. We want money. Oh, what a joke. Here's the headline. Record warmth has melted the oldest, thickest Arctic ice. Yeah. And you were going to call this the first public green building in Tampa Bay. Not. Here's the column written by grandsons of Thomas Edison in the New York Times. And they talk about there was a sign that was placed all over our great-grandfather's labs that read, "There is no expedient to which man will not go to avoid the labor of thinking." Well, let me tell you, it's no more evident than here. Oh, it's so evident. I mean, you know, the idiots that were going to give you that award, first public green building in Tampa Bay, day-lit building. Ah, yes. And your plan, does it account for the hurricanes coming? By the way, that's not a dais up there, that's a dais. You don't even know where you sit. It's pure malfeasance. You all should resign. It's a big joke. It's criminal what's happening here. Literally criminal. The planet's burning and you ignore science.
Thank you, Mr. Clutho. 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you.
Kathy Harrelson is our next speaker. followed by Dina Levingood.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Harrelson. I'm the president of the St. Petersburg Sustainability Council, and I'm here in opposition to the toilet to tap proposal. In spite of the hard work of this body over the years, until you have examined, implemented, and exhausted every conservation measure, including stopping the use of potable water for turf grass, a crop that we plant, feed, and water but can never consume. It makes no sense. This type of step should be the very last step that you take. There is nothing more important than our aquifer, nothing more important other than the air we breathe than our fresh water. In addition, it was hard to tell from the presentation that you are adjusting the wholesale rate for communities that are habitually egregious water abusers. I think maybe I'd like to say who that is, but I think we all know. It's the community that is most in favor of this proposal and in an effort to make money on water coming and going. So Pinellas County, lowest per capita water use in the state, what we get for our efforts, and I'm not saying we can't do better, we certainly can, but what we get are higher rates as a result of the actions of other communities in this consortium. So these are the kind of things, until you really have done all the work for conservation, until we've really looked at what is eventually going to come to pass, which is that we need to get a grip on how we are spending and using our potable water, not finding ways that we think scientifically we can get her done in another way by injecting water into our aquifer so it can be cleaned. It just doesn't make sense. So I certainly urge you today to oppose this measure and really take a serious look at all of the other things that can be done to make conservation happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Dina Levingood, followed by Lisa Vanover.
Good morning. Thank you very much for allowing us this opportunity. I wondered if it would be possible to cede time so that we may read our letter that we've sent to the board into the record in its entirety. And I have 4 of our members here, Lisa Ryan, Peggy Land, Jason Marlowe, and Avi Baskin, who have signed up to speak, who are willing to cede that time.
So you're, okay, if you could stop the clock for a second. Oh, she's over there. Okay, just remember at 2:45, you still have quite a bit of time. But, so you want Peggy Land,
Peggy Land,
Lisa Ryan,
Liza Ryan,
Liza Ryan,
Jason Marlowe,
Jason Marlowe,
and Avi Baskin. You would stand up, please.
and Alexandra Baskin? Alexandra, and those 4 individuals want to cede their time to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that would, if you could just reset the clock to
We will not need all that time, but
14 minutes and 45 seconds.
we promise we won't be up here that long. Thank you so much for your consideration. So good morning, I'm Dina Levingood, and I am here today representing the League of Women Voters of Hillsborough County, St. Pete Area's League of Women Voters, and the League of Women Voters of North Pinellas County. And the letter we are reading into the record is from all 3 of these leagues that was submitted to the board for consideration. The leagues of our 3 leagues come before you to strongly urge Tampa Bay Water to not move forward with the agreement and memorandum of understanding with the City of Tampa regarding the Tampa Augmentation Project at this time. The leagues support the investigation of the use of alternative water supplies as needed by our region in the future, if the process is transparent and public, and the proposed process and procedures use best practices and meet accepted standards. However, the proposal before you lacks transparency and public process, and it doesn't adequately address the concerns raised in our letter of February the 18th of this year, and other concerns raised by others, and the concerns listed below. We're concerned about the risk to Tampa Bay Water's interlocal agreement and the smaller cities. We concur with the Tampa Bay Times guest column entitled Protect Regionalism and Protect Tampa Bay Water that was authored by former Tampa Bay Water leaders and published on April 10, 2019. It raised the following concerns regarding approval of the TAP agreement and the MOU. The agreement will change the utilities business model and restore disparities that Tampa Bay Water was formed to eliminate. Number two, it will set a precedent that allows a member to fully self-supply while still voting on matters in which it has no vested interest, leaving behind remaining member governments with enormous debt, reduced demand, and inflated rates. The third, the only way to know and protect Tampa Bay Water is to make a regional project. We're concerned about financial risk. The City of Tampa appears to lack confidence that this proposal will result in an outcome of benefit to the region. In advance, it's requesting that Tampa Bay Water repay their $7 million expenditure if the pilot project is found not to be of benefit to the region when it's reviewed next year in June 2020. It would be an irresponsible misuse of taxpayer money for Tampa Bay Water to assume the risk for an individual member. Number three, risk to environmental and public health and public safety. We're concerned about compliance, best practices, and proven technology. The City of Tampa has not presented a fully detailed plan, clearly laying out all processes, procedures, expected outcomes, and benchmarks to support the objective of providing an alternative water source of benefit to the region, as is the standard. As stated in the Tampa Bay Times column, there are too many unknowns related to TAP. The yield, the cost, the aquifer impacts, and public acceptance have yet to be determined. The Florida water industry is also creating a potable reuse commission, as it presented last meeting in February 18th, to develop the framework for the implementation of potable reuse in Florida, including regulations and guidance for stand-ins. It will include experts from a variety of backgrounds, including science and public health, and the leagues believe that it would be wise to wait for the implementation of these regulations to ensure the aquifer, the region's principal and least expensive source of potable water available for use, is protected. The TAP proposal also has not been peer-reviewed, nor has this process been transparent like that what we saw in Altamont Springs project. It also has not followed scientific and best practice industry standards like those proposed by the Potable Reuse Commission, and as used in other successful reuse projects like those in Orange County, California, and in Singapore. We're concerned about public health and safety. A review by the plan by the Hillsborough River Interlocal Planning Board, Technical Advisory Committee, or Council, raised the following concerns. Reclaimed water can contain pharmaceuticals, hormones, and other contaminants. It's not yet clear to what extent these contaminants would be removed under the proposal. Also, with their use on the rise, the long-term ingestion of trace amounts of pharmaceuticals on human health has not been sufficiently studied. To be more specific, which pharmaceuticals and at what levels is not currently tested in potable or reclaimed water on a regular basis. There's also a concern that other chemicals may be present in this water, from sunscreen ingredients to pesticides, that are currently not included in the drinking water standards. The City of Tampa acknowledges that reclaimed water contains higher levels of chloride salts than potable drinking water in its publication, Managing Healthy Landscapes and Using Reclaimed Water. Further, it states that landscapes irrigated with reclaimed water should be monitored, as poor drainage and pooling water may also allow accumulation of the salts in the soil, and that soil-tolerant plants should be used. With this knowledge, it would appear that the likelihood of permanently contaminating the aquifer with salt and other potential contaminants mentioned above through the cumulative impact of repeated injection of reclaimed water would be very high. The risk is too great. The long-term cost of pollution, the region's principal and least expensive source of clean water, would be immeasurable to our health and safety, the environment, communities, and local governments. There also are concerns about compliance, sewage overflows, failed inspections, and pollution violations. What if one of these events occur? And how would that increase the potential aquifer contamination? Finally, nowhere is climate change addressed. The City of Tampa's TAP proposal doesn't address any of the expected impacts, including sea level rise, flooding, rising water tables, storm surges, and other natural disasters in our high-risk, vulnerable region. In closing, moving forward in haste on a project that's not been fully reviewed and vetted by peers, shown to be a benefit to the region or accepted by the public, would be irresponsible and could set a precedent for proposals that might not benefit the entire region in the future. Any proposed effort should meet a litmus test of being of benefit to all member governments in our region and utilize a transparent and public process before consideration. The leagues of Hillsborough County, St. Petersburg, and North Pinellas again respectfully urge you to not move forward on the proposed agreement and MOU at this time. The expenditure of public funds on this project does not appear to be prudent until the concerns and questions that have been raised are clearly answered to the satisfaction of all parties, communities, and governments concerned. We appreciate your thoughtful consideration and encourage you to consider the League of Women Voters as a future partner as you move forward on future alternative water sources. Thank you for your public service and on behalf of our communities.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Lisa Vanover, followed by Kent Bailey.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Vanover. I live on 28th Avenue South in Gulfport. I'm the second vice president of the League of Women Voters of St. Petersburg area. I fully support our letter that Dina shared just now and agree also with the op-ed that former Tampa Bay Water board members and the former Tampa Bay Water manager published in the Tampa Bay Times on Friday. I have a few additional thoughts on agenda item H to share as an individual. I previously owned a business. I did government contracts, and I was vice president. And so I have very extensive experience with government contracts that I'd like to share some thoughts in relation to that. First, thank you for your time and accepting public comments this morning and all the work that you do. After reviewing the interlocal agreement, I see that there are 3 county signatories, Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco, and 3 city signatories, Newport Richey, St. Petersburg, and Tampa. Tampa Bay Water is not a signatory of the interlocal agreement that created Tampa Bay Water, nor have the signatories delegated responsibilities for amendments to Tampa Bay Water. If you imagine a Venn diagram of who gets to say and to vote on any agreements in regard to the interlocal agreement, which would include, but is not limited to, amendments to the average million gallons per day and amendments to exclusionary clauses, the 6 signatories have that authority completely, and Tampa Bay Water does not. Tampa Bay Water would be fully outside of that Venn diagram. Again, the 6 signatories I named above may approve any such amendments. This structure was put into place to protect the regionality of Tampa Bay Water. So as much as I respect and appreciate all of your work on this board, I respectfully ask you to deny this proposal, for it is not something that you have authority to act on. Good governance means that you must act in accordance with the limits of your authority. Good governance further means that you must protect the regionality of this regional water authority, as that is why it was created in the first place, and it's worked really well. I could give you many additional environmental and health reasons to deny this project as it was submitted. I could agree at some point there may be a need for alternative water sources if done correctly and according to the public and transparent process laid out in the League's letter, and if such a project were a project of Tampa Bay Water itself, not just one signatory. But the core issue here is that you're being asked to vote on something that does not appear to be within the scope of being a Tampa Bay Water Board member. So the answer must be no. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for all you do. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Kent Bailey, followed by Nancy Stevens.
Good morning, Kent Bailey, 15012 Highway 301, Thanodisassa, Florida, Chair of Tampa Bay Sierra Club, speaking on behalf of 20,000 members and supporters. Let me begin by reading from TAP Final Phase 1 Summary and Implementation Plan, which says in part, the regulatory pathway for permitting TAP is not clearly defined. It goes on to say, it is not specifically covered by existing regulations. Now, this would not be true if HB 1149, which came across Governor Scott's desk just about a year ago, last April, had been signed into law. But Governor Scott did not sign HB 1149 into law. And he vetoed it, saying that Florida has stringent water quality standards and we're going to keep it that way. If he had signed it, it would be a different matter for regulations related to the TAP project. The two pipes that go down into the aquifer, the injection pipe, the withdrawal pipe, were they connected, this project would not be permissible. But the city maintains because they are separated by a few hundred feet of lime rock, somehow or other, there's going to be a purification that happens in the lime rock. Now, lime rock matrix, they maintain this in spite of the 2018 TAP Water Quality and Quantity Analysis Final Report, which in Appendix F says, and I quote, there is insufficient data available to make reliable predictions about the persistence or removal of most reclaimed water microconstituents, speaking of the passage through the lime rock matrix. They go on to say, even where the characteristic reaction types are reasonably well known, there is insufficient information available on the characteristic rates of reaction to make accurately quantitative projections of the reactive quantities resulting concentrations. In short, the transformational magic attributed to the lime rock matrix is 100% aspirational and 0% science. This project is unnecessary, expensive, dangerous, and irreversible. The constellation of consequences includes a host of unknown unknowns. We do know, however, that half our domestic water supplies pour down on the ground to grow non-native turf grass, which would be the best use of this reclaimed water. It is unnecessary, expensive, dangerous, irreversible, and as a matter of fact, probably inconsistent with at least the spirit, if not the letter, of existing regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Stevens, followed by Jim House. If you just give it to our administrative assistant, she'll pass them out for you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Nancy Stevens. I'm from Tampa, and I'm Tampa Bay Sierra Club Conservation Chair. And my comments are based upon my concerns that this project is a plan to provide water in the cheapest possible way, and then try to convince the public it's going to be safe to drink. I have a series of questions that really need to be answered, that the public needs to hear answered before we are convinced and it is safe to drink. Some of these questions are, what exactly is in the wastewater that will be inserted into the aquifer? The Tampa Bay Sierra Club's requested a complete list of what is in the water. In the report, there were over 40 pages that were blank of things that would components in the water. The sewage plant has problems today. Incidents that today violate the sewage requirements, what would that be to do to drinking water? So there's concerns there on the quality of the water, even today, in the sewage system. Kent already mentioned, will the aquifer clean the wastewater? It's hard to understand how wastewater that's currently polluting the bay will actually freshen the aquifer. And studies have shown that it takes over 30 years for natural processes to clean wastewater. What will be the cumulative effects of introducing these components into the wastewater? We have to study how, what's going to happen over time. Will the pollutants build up? Will they leach into the drinking water? And what will it do to the aquifer itself? Will it destroy the aquifer? Will cause sinkholes? And what really is the cost of this project? These questions have to be answered before the actual cost will be known, what the whole thing's going to cost. So Tampa needs to be answering hard questions about the impact of this project. Further monitoring and study need to be done. The public needs to be included in the process and the results. When Tampa's answered the tough questions, PR spin won't be necessary to convince the public it's a good plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim House, followed by Norton Baskin.
Good morning. I'm Jim House, chair of the Suncoast Sierra Club Conservation Committee. I'm here to talk about the toilet to tap, although that's bad branding, and I do apologize on our behalf. What this plan is suggesting we do is pump wastewater down into the aquifer and pump it out at a secondary site, and the suggestion has been made that this will somehow clean the water. Let's assume for a moment that this were true, and we can indeed ask the aquifer to be some kind of geological Brita filter. What does one have the capacity to do once the Brita filter in the fridge gets old? That's right, we change it. We can't replace our underlying bedrock. Once that filter is used up, it stays there. And if the water we pump down into the aquifer is not free of dissolved chemistry, that chemistry, no matter how small it is incrementally, will add up in what the scientists call a negative feedback loop. Nitrogen and phosphorus, not thoroughly removed, will then persist in the aquifer, adding to the nutrient pollution in our environment, but this time in a place that naturally doesn't have any. It will foster bacterial and fungal growth in an underground environment not given to sustain that kind of life. What happens when we have a red tide scale event, but it's underground and can't be dealt with as easily as just fish removal off the surface waters? What happens when we inadvertently foul up our entire aquifer by promoting growth of organisms where they don't belong? Keep in mind this seepage will find its way out into the oceans and into our springs, eventually adding nutrient pollution to those waters with algae blooms and cyanobacteria respectively. This part of the process might not come for some time, but once started, we will literally have no way to stop it. Another concern I have is that the pH of the water being injected into our aquifer. Large-scale water filtration operations have a range of acceptable parameters and can vary quite a bit. If we are pumping water down into a layer of calcium bicarbonate, the slightest divergence from the correct pH would create the same chemical reaction that any sixth grader can tell you about that made a volcano in the science fair. Instead of vinegar and baking soda coming out, we will end up with solution holes and possible sinkholes, and it won't be on a geological timescale. We'll have, in effect, ramped it up into an anthropogenic one. Finally, I thought I'd share with you how we test an imperiled water body to see if human waste is a factor in overloading nutrient pollution in a freshwater lake, for example. We test for ibuprofen. We test for that drug because natural filtration systems won't get it out. This filtration system won't get it out. There are a whole host of drugs that will go into this system unchecked and will add up very much like the nutrient pollution will. The only way to successfully do this is by reverse osmosis filtration. That will be an expensive process, but won't damage the environment nor future generations, and you have to keep the aquifers out of it. Thank you for your time, and please end this terrible initiative.
Thank you very much. Norton Baskin? I choose not to speak. Okay, thank you. Phil Compton? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Phil Compton. I reside at 1430 Park Circle in Tampa. That's on the Hillsborough River, about a mile into the estuary of Tampa Bay. I'm here representing the Friends of the Hillsborough River. 20 years ago, Friends challenged a Tampa practice on the river that was not based in science, but rather the city's desire to use all of the river's water, even if it meant leaving none for the river's estuary below the dam. We challenged that practice, got a 5-year scientific study done, and then with Hillsborough County's support, made sure the river got the daily flow of clean, fresh water that the data showed it requires every day to function as a tidal estuary. In the past 12 years since that daily minimum flow started, the life of the river and the bay have recovered to a remarkable degree. At first, the city planned to use water from the current treatment plant as a source of that daily flow, but concern about the effect of contaminants stopped that plan here at Tampa Bay Water. And this is over a decade ago. On the TAP, as someone who'd be drinking this water every day for the rest of my life, we want to know what level of contaminants, chemicals that are not present today in Tampa's potable water supply, would be there after dilution in the aquifer and normal processing at the Tippin treatment plant. We want to know the known impact on human health from long-term exposure to such levels of chemical contaminants as they would be still present after advanced treatment at the current plant. We also want to know what the impact would be on the fish that are now spawning in spring at Tampa Bay's estuary, the nursery below Tampa's reservoir on the river. We do know that high enough levels of hormones will turn boy fish into girl fish or vice versa. Would we be adding fresh water to the estuary that would wreak havoc on the river's recovering fish that results in a crash of the bay's fish and wildlife population? We do know that fish navigate by their sense of smell. Would levels of fragrances washing off in everyone's daily shower remain at levels high enough to blind fish, to numb their sense of smell the way you might experience after a few minutes at a department store perfume counter? We don't know any of these things. Perhaps it would be perfectly safe to add this water with no additional treatment. Perhaps Tampa can safely avoid spending money on the additional treatment that other cities invest in to ensure the safety of their reused water. Perhaps it would be safe for Tampa to do this project on the cheap. But until answers to questions like these are provided with factual documentation and absolutely certainty to the public who drink the water and care about the river and the bay, Tampa should not proceed with what appears to be a project with many potentially serious unknown risk. The former leaders of Tampa Bay Water made it clear in their op-ed last week that there is no rush to get this project through. Well, there is one, Mayor Buckhorn's desire to get this project approved before he exits office. That by itself should not be allowed to prevail as a reason to cut corners as a permanent change is made to the safety and quality of Tampa's drinking water. Changes that, once done, could not be undone. Changes that could permanently affect the health of hundreds of thousands of his current constituents. The Board of Tampa Bay Water should demand answers to these and other questions before approving Tampa's request. Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin Oshorn, and followed by Dr. Don Pullman. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Ben Oxhorn. I'm the water reuse chair, I guess, of the Tampa Bay group of the Sierra Club. I sent in a 5-page letter to you that I assume many of you have read. I'm not going to repeat it, and you've heard a lot of what I said in the other comments, so I'm not going to repeat that either. What I do want to say is that I based what I said on reading all the reports and what I think is the authoritative guide on portable reuse at the moment, which is the 2017 EPA Potable Use Compendium or whatever, which discusses the science and the regulations and the different processes, and it's written very clearly. I want to make that clear that I didn't start out opposing this, but this really isn't done right. And what I'd like to talk about is your role here, because the other things have already been covered. And that's that this isn't an environmental agency. I mean, we don't have scientists here. If you mess up what's in the Floridan aquifer under the city of Tampa, the area won't have any water that's safe to drink. I mean, it's a real big risk. What I think would be much better course is to let these regulations be adopted at the state level, perhaps get involved in it if there's a way for you to do it, My guess is the regulations would be similar to the ones in California, where they have a lot of potable reuse projects, and there's a requirement that if you put water into the aquifer, you have to have reverse osmosis and very tight filtration to try and get out some of the chemical stuff and whatever that would be in the sewage effluent. So we would expect that that would probably be in place here. Also look at it at a regional level. Instead of just approving this one, if you're going to have this kind of project, wouldn't it make more sense to have it in Pinellas County, away from the aquifer that you're using for water, something like the Clearwater Project? And so that's it. But I just wanted to let you know that I didn't have any views at the start, and it was based on the research I did. So I urge you to vote this down and continue to look for ways to find us some clean water.
Thank you. Dr. Don Pullman?
Dr. Don Pullman speaking today as a private citizen. My perspective and opinions are my own, based on private knowledge and public information. I depend on Tampa Bay Water for regional supply. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Item H1 offers no direction and lacks a recommendation. The agreement is ill-conceived and torments the region. I recommend you reject H1 with no action. If you vote, I urge vote no. The partnership agreement with SwiftMud from 1998-2008 is well known for its $183 million co-funding. That was 50% of the estimated $365 million. Many people do not know where that $365 million came from. The actual cost exceeded $600 million. TAP will not cost $350 million. It will likely exceed $500 million. This is not a secret. For the Hillsborough River permit, increasing $82 million or 82 million gallons per day to $132 million per day for Tampa presumes reclaimed water at a one-to-one benefit. This is unproven and highly unlikely. For Tampa Bay Water, claiming 20 million gallons per day or more average annual for the Tampa Bypass Canal is simply false. Many knowledgeable people agree with this. TAP requires at least 15 permits and approvals, which are beyond Tampa's control. Schedules and outcomes are unknown and unknowable. Apparently, TAP includes 27 new wells and a water use permit. That's a well field. The fact is, well fields belong to Tampa Bay Water. Assigning authority, well fields to members was never contemplated and has no basis. Considering the contract, it is fundamentally flawed. As previously stated by others here today, Tampa Bay Water is not a party to the interlocal agreement of its 6 members. But the agreement makes claims and relies upon 6 members collectively and the interlocal agreement in multiple clauses. TAP must be a regional project to capture SwiftMud cooperative funding, and regional projects have always only been funded through regional authorities. This is clearly problematic. This agreement claims consistency with the interlocal agreement and states that no changes in state law are required. 2 parties don't decide this by contract. As others have stated here today, this agreement attempts to separate a member from the intent, purpose, and function of Tampa Bay Water to operate on its own while acting here in name only. Again, this is beyond the scope of a 2-party contract. Further board discussion considering this agreement or any like it
Thank you.
is a public assault. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be done in a few seconds.
Yeah, sir, we allow 3 minutes for each speaker,
Yes,
and your 3 minutes is up.
I understand.
Thank you.
Very kind of you to allow me to speak today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I would also appreciate you not considering this.
Pardon me?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak that has not been signed up? No one? Okay, that concludes our public comment. And we will now move into the agenda. We do have the consent agenda in front of us, and are there any items to be pulled by any members?
Did he have anything? Did the general?
I do.
The general, I did, I wanted to pull number C3.
Actually, I'm going to be pulling C3 and deferring it indefinitely, and or to a later date. We are in the process of evaluating whether a long-term agreement, 30 years for a set price, is in the best interest of our customers and our operation. I know we've discussed this project, but we're just in the process of evaluating it.
That's why I asked to be pulled, so we could chat about that.
Well, I'm done.
Oh, I'm not, but I just wanted to make sure that that was the only one I wanted to pull, so.
Madam Chair, I had a question about C3 too. I was curious why it's getting pulled because we were all set to there was a little bit of a rush, it seemed, to pass this back in February. I asked that we pull it so that we could have more time to discuss it. Now here we are, and has something changed since
Well,
February?
I think in the evaluation process in our budget, our area, and just I think our management, our county administrator, and we've just had a discussion about the long-term agreement, the 30 years, and the set price, and what would be in the best interest of our customers and our operation as a utility. And so we're deferring it to a later date. That's it.
Well, I just continued to have those same concerns, and I have those same concerns as it relates to the topic that we're going to be talking about today. And,
what topic?
And the precedent connection.
I'm sorry, the what topic? I didn't hear.
The TAP project that we're going to be talking about later. So the connection between the two and precedence issues and all of the things that we're all concerned about, all of a sudden being pulled. And again, I understand you want to pull it. There's other things to talk about, but I do think this is a concern. It just hit a little yellow flag for me, and so fine. We're going to pull it. That's fine, but I do think it's relevant. So thank you.
It doesn't have anything to do with the TAP project.
Okay.
It has to do with our evaluation of a 30-year agreement at a set price. I think your administration, in your government, you would be evaluating that also. So that's where we're at. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, including deferring item C3.
Second.
You want to make the motion? Oh. You're making the motion and you're seconding.
So moved.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the consent agenda, approving the consent agenda minus item C3. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passed. And now I'll turn our agenda over to our general manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, board members. Just wanted to report on the March 18th Executive Committee meeting. I did give the committee an update of Tampa Bay Water's funding request, both at the state and the district level. There are, at the state level, there are 3 projects that we have requested funding. The reservoir, a solar energy system for $1.2 million, the Eldridge Wild underground power lines for $1.9 million, Eldridge Wild pumps and motor replacements for $2.35 million. These bills are moving through the process and appear to be on track and compliant with the steps needed to be eligible for state funding. And we'll certainly keep the board updated on those as that progress. In regard to the Southwest Florida Water Management District co-funding request, we have the surface from the master water plan. We have the surface water expansion study for $2.25 thousand dollars requested. The desal expansion study for $550,000. The groundwater via the Sharp study for $275,000 was requested, and then $643,000 to support the demand management program. The applications are pending with the Southwest Florida Water Management District, and the surface water expansion, and these are ranked high for funding. And we just recently made a presentation on the desalination project to the board, district board, and the Sharp study is could be ranked high pending the approval of a memorandum of understanding. So that's what I have. Everything else that was covered under the in the executive committee is elsewhere on the agenda, and that's all I have, unless the board has questions.
Anyone have questions?
Quick question.
Commissioner Eckers?
Yeah, you had said something about asking for $275,000 for a Sharp project pending the approval of the MOU. So how does that work, since we don't have an MOU and probably won't for some time?
Mr. Hurt, could you address that question, please?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Yes, the application as it stands today would be ranked low without approval of the MOU. So my understanding is that the district governing board will meet in June to review the budget. And it's still, we're pretty much getting very close to the point where it'd be very difficult to continue moving this forward as a valid application in the absence of the MOU. So without the MOU approved, then it will remain as a low-ranked project, which would not, more than likely not receive funding.
So when that does get approved at some point, then it would just be resubmitted?
It could be resubmitted, yes. I had a discussion with district staff before the meeting today, and they would be willing to consider that, as it moves forward. But it just becomes more and more difficult as time goes by.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we can move forward. H1.
Yes, ma'am. And I think Mr. Don Kahn or Mr. Peter Dunbar is going to be.
You're going to introduce?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
very good, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the February meeting of the board, the TAP agreement was discussed, and the board approved 6 new sections in concept to be added to the agreement, making a total of 15 sections in the agreement. In your agenda packet, you have first 2 attachments to the agenda packet. Provide the board with a revision of the agreement that includes the new language that has been developed to address these 6 new sections. They're shown as sections 10 through 15. Attachment 1 is a clean version. Attachment 2 is a black line version showing strike-throughs and underlines. The text is exactly the same in the 2 attachments. Since development of attachments 1 and 2, the executive committee has met and reviewed that draft, and member government attorneys have reviewed that draft. And as a result, some questions were raised, some requests for further clarifications were raised, and some issues were raised with regard to the draft that appears as attachment 1 and 2. Attachment 3 to this agenda item presents those questions and those issues and those options that result from those meetings. They're presented in most instances as actual language that the board can look at, and if the board feels appropriate, can use to further amend the agreement. Mr. Dunbar has facilitated this process and the discussion with the attorneys and staff throughout. And with your permission, I'd like to turn the matter over to Mr. Dunbar at this time.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Dunbar.
Madam Chairman, good morning, members of the board. With your permission, let me begin with an overview of what is in the 3rd attachment that was in the packet. There are 12 issues that were reviewed by the member government attorneys after the executive committee meeting. The 12 issues come from the executive committee, from the staff of Tampa Bay Water, and from the city of Tampa. They are numbered 1 through 12, but they are not organized by the priority of the issues. The first 7 are simply proposed language that go chronologically or offered chronologically the way the changes would appear in the actual MOU. The remaining 5 issues come from the Executive Committee and are issues of general interest and concern. And I would defer to the members of the board and the manner in which you would like to handle those or have me address them. There are some that are primarily technical, and there's one that's already been disposed of by withdrawal by the city of Tampa, but I would begin to work through them at the board's pleasure.
Okay. Let me just, so everybody understands what page we're on here. We have the MOU with the, well, it's black line, not red line, with the changes that we reached compromise on. Is that correct? And
Yes.
then there are issues behind that need to be discussed.
Attachment 3.
Attachment 3. So you're asking us, do we want to go back to the MOU and just rediscuss those issues from item 10 on, from section 10 on? Is that what you're asking?
No, Madam Chair, I was asking that I am prepared to discuss it as the board would like to do it. One of the issues, I believe, that was raised by Councilmember Rice and Commissioner Eggers was to talk about the fundamental policy without actually looking at the other issues first, or whichever order the board would like to take them in, I will be prepared to do my
Well,
best.
I think we should just go ahead and get started and discuss the overall policies and then go into the issues after that.
Madam Chair,
Councilwoman Rice?
issue number 12 was brought up because it deals with fundamental policy questions that we didn't want to get lost in the shuffle. And it deals with the issue of what Commissioner Eggers brought up about bringing the cart before the horse, and that it makes sense to discuss whether we should do this rather than just going straight into the discussion of how we do it.
Okay.
And then I'd also further add that issue number 7 is of high importance, and I would want to put issue number 12 and issue number 7 at the top of the list as far as the order in which we go through.
And then we'll move to the issues in attachment 3.
Right,
that
I'm
correct?
suggesting issue 12, then
12.
issue 7, and then we could just take up the rest of the order unless anyone else.
That
Wants to
in the
change the order.
attachment 3?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. And I agree that issue number 12 seems like that should come first because the citizens raised some excellent questions today. I've asked questions. Those have been asked of Tampa, and I think some discussion there is warranted on the overarching question of should we proceed before we are go down each and every little issue listed, so I concur.
Okay, so let's start with number 12. Is that what you would like to do? Councilwoman Rice?
Yes.
Number 12 first. Okay.
So I know certainly at the executive committee level and at other times, I think with the whole board, we've brought up the fact that there hasn't been as much discussion as we would like to see on governance issues and whether the Tampa MOU is something that we should do and how exactly it impacts the interlocal agreement, how it may open a door, perhaps inadvertently, to other member governments proposing projects that could cause serious issues for Tampa Bay water. It would be my desire to make a motion to defer the TAP MOU discussion and vote until June of 2020. And that way, there's so many unknowns that have been mentioned in terms of environmental and public health impact, debt, cost, permitting, and now even unknowns about what another member government wants to do. However, I would support that Tampa Bay Water, that the board direct Tampa Bay Water staff to support the appropriations request filed by Representative Toledo for $1.6 million in co-funding. And if the legislative request does not pass, that we would direct Tampa Bay Water to commit to $1.6 million in the co-funding. However, we need to defer the TAP MOU decision until we get feasibility reports and we have time to really discuss what this is going to do to the historic regional interlocal agreement that has created Tampa Bay Water. It's a motion.
Second.
Okay. So I think we're going to have to hear some feedback from some people regarding that motion. Actually, let's first take comment from our members. And then, of course, I want to hear from the city of Tampa and also Swiftmud. I think I saw Swiftmud here. I see Joel. There you are. You're hiding.
Oh, he's not.
Okay. Councilman Miranda?
I have no
Are you
comment
first?
till I hear from the city.
Okay. Any other commissioners?
Yeah, I'll just ask a question. If we defer until June of 2020 is the motion, will the feasibility study be complete by then? Yes, thank you.
Yes, that was why I picked that date.
Right, thank you.
And I say,
Well, yeah, it's yes, because she clarified it with funding to continue. It's actually the product design and engineering. I think it's the PD&E, basically, isn't it? I don't know. I asked the
That was
city.
feasibility.
Okay,
Chairman,
yes.
just in a question, and then perhaps Commissioner Rice could help me with this. I'm almost saying this is a distinction without a difference because we've got final approval in the MOU. Looks like it's slated for June 2020. So I'm trying to figure out how this changes things, and certainly want to hear from Tampa as well. But if the commissioner could humor me and explain
Yes.
exactly where she's going with this.
I think it's a fairly reasonable compromise. It's offering to instruct staff to commit to the co-funding commitment to Tampa, but it's short of, and there's no guarantee of approval in June of 2020. It's keeping us from signing a document that may very well contradict the interlocal agreement. As I think you know, there was a column written by a number of previous Tampa Bay board members and even an executive director. Almost all of us have predecessors that sat in these seats just as longer than we have, including you, Matt Jordan, who are opposed to this project for some pretty solid reasons. There's no rush into voting for the MOU today. I'm saying let's wait until June 2020. Let's be prudent. Let's be cautious. There's plenty of reasons why we should go forward with precaution. This is an unprecedented decision. It's okay, and we should look at some of these proposals with a jaundiced eye. Let's just do it right. Go slow. We don't need to rush into the MOU today. But if what Tampa has consistently complained about was the deadline for getting co-funding, then I'm willing to commit to the 1.6. I could vote for that, but I don't want to vote for the MOU. Is that clear?
Thank you.
Okay. Any other Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, I think the direction that you're heading, I can support. I actually mentioned the idea of funding before, and so I'll stick with that. I do think that we are, the fact that we are a regional authority, so that when we stamp any approval on anything, has different meanings to different people. It might mean to the Tampa Council that we've blessed it, and so maybe they can get on board. it might mean to a lot of different people that are thinking about using the toilet to tap stuff for drinking water, that if we've blessed it, maybe it's not so bad. So I do think there's an awful lot that we have to be careful of when we put a stamp of approval on it. The only concern I have a little bit, and I just want to hear some more discussion on it, is some of the comments that were made earlier, and we've made them before, that this topic is not about giving away property rights, not water rights. This is not about giving away water assets. We don't own any of this stuff. So this is really kind of a flawed thought process. I really think this is an ILA amendment issue. It's not for us. As somebody said, or some of the comments here, we've made them before, we're not even on the agreement. We're trying, and I with all due respect, I thank the attorneys for doing what the board said. Try to come up with an agreement that works. Thank you, but I don't think it works. I think in the end, each of our respective governments needs to weigh in on this. This is a big deal. This is not selling water assets that require a supermajority vote. This is beyond that. This is about giving up rights to water production. So I'd like to continue while we wait for going forward in that next year. I'd like to drill into this a little bit more and how this MOU really does provide an alternative to an ILA amendment, which I am more in favor of. As long as that can be part of the process, I'm comfortable with it. I do think it is significant, and it was mentioned here that past board members who have lived this, who have created this, who understood a lot more about what might lie ahead, and are still so passionately involved in this. They believe in their hearts that this is a problem. It raises questions that we need to have answers. And so the rush, why rush? There's no need to rush this project. So I will support the motion, but I certainly would like to at least have the idea that we will continue investigating this MOU as a substitute for the amendment to the interlocal as quickly as possible, because I still have a significant concern with that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Oakley.
I also support this issue, and that's why I gave my second. Our predecessors went through a lot to make this agreement work for Tampa Bay Water, and there's no reason to rush into it that possibly could break it up. And member governors want to stand out and do something that would not be in keeping it together. We need to keep Tampa Bay Water together as a region. It's been good for Pasco County. I think it's been good for the other member governments also. But there's no way in the world I want to rush into that decision that I would think that would dismantle it and have other governors, individual governments of ours. I respect their needs for water in the future, but we also need to do it together as a region, and that's what this agreement set us up to be. And I think I want to continue being part of a region rather than an individual. Again, it's been great for Pasco County. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Smith.
Yes, I think there is an important distinction between our agreeing now and then opting in again in June compared with the new motion on the floor and simply waiting till that date. It really doesn't do that much to the project, or if anything, because it can continue the feasibility study. But there is considerable public concern and alarm about what the effects might be on our aquifer and on our drinking water. And I've raised questions, the League of Women Voters has raised questions, the Sierra Clubs have raised questions. A lot of former members of this board have raised questions, and many of those questions were sent to the city of Tampa that I had asked staff to ask and of this board, and when Tampa Bay Water staff asked the city of Tampa for answers to these questions, they were told, the response is, well, we can't get to those answers until after the feasibility study is done, Well, here's, we'll just highlight in blue all the questions that we can't answer until the feasibility study is done. And here's all the response from the city of Tampa for those questions, some of which are important to me. Some of them, I understand you can't answer until after the feasibility study is done. Some of them were about, how are you going to do the feasibility study? How are you doing the feasibility? How do you expect the feasibility study to answer these questions? So I think some of those should reasonably be answered before we start too far down this path. But I would really think that the public deserves more of a chance to have some of these questions answered by the feasibility study before we have, as Commissioner Egger said, before we have blessed this with our vote. And practically, I think this is a really good compromise to continue researching the feasibility of this before we decide. So thank you.
Other members?
Well, Madam Chairman, I
Commissioner
think that's a good compromise. I want to hear from the city of Tampa if this works for them to be able to go forward to work on the feasibility. So I see they're having a little chat back there, but hopefully we'll hear from someone soon
Yes,
and
they
see if
are.
this is a good compromise to keep moving forward and get the data.
Okay, Jean, are you ready?
Good morning, Madam
Good
Chair, board members, Jan McLean with the City of Tampa. Could I get a clarification on what the motion is? We've been back here discussing on the different portions of it, and I do understand, I'll just let you.
I move to defer the TAP MOU discussion until June 2020. At that time, we will at least have a feasibility study in hand and perhaps more time to clarify many of the unknowns that have been stated by board members, our predecessors, and members of the public. But meanwhile, to direct Tampa Bay Water staff to support the City of Tampa's appropriations request as filed by Representative Toledo for $1.6 million in co-funding. If the $1.6 million in co-funding does not pass, then I would support Tampa Bay Water committing to the City of Tampa the $1.6 million in co-funding and your application to SwiftMud.
In the applications to SwiftMud, is that what, the last part?
Correct. Without the MOU.
Thank you for the offer, and certainly for continuing to entertain the project and trying to find a way that we might all come to resolution. There are some outstanding issues. I was trying to briefly have those conversations, and I apologize that I didn't get the clarity of the motion. One, thank you for the backup if the legislation does not pass in Tallahassee for the 1.6. I'm not entirely sure, and that was part of the clarity that I was trying to ask Mr. Armstrong, what we would actually need from the board in support of our application for the SwiftMud application. I'm not entirely sure that Tampa Bay Water staff support would be sufficient. They were looking for an MOU because of their policies for cooperative funding. So that may be an issue. The city is not totally opposed to deferring it to the June date under the circumstances that you have offered. There is an outstanding question of the assignment of rights and how we could go forward in the interim with the testing that we need. We would be installing some of those wells to be used to be able to access the data. And if we don't have the assignment of rights now, what Tampa Bay Water's position might be with regard to those wells as we move forward. And I was trying to do all of that clarity, confirmation while you all were having the discussions up here.
Oh,
So-
Jan, what do you need? What do you need from us to get you to where you need to be to accept this? Do you need us to take a break for a few minutes so you can figure it out, or I'm not sure because we'll work with you.
10 minutes would be appreciated to at least be able to get to the folks that we need instead of running around in front of you while you're having a conversation.
Councilman
Madam
Moreno?
Chair, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Rice. I'm just thinking in 10 minutes, you can't even pull a tooth. So what I'm saying is this. Why don't we understand that we have another meeting in June? Why don't what we discussed today bring back in June and I'm not opposed to extension right now. If I knew what it may be within that extension. So I'd like to see us in June of 2019 discuss what we're going to do in June of 20, along with the city and all the bystanders that are here, all the Sierra clubs and the League of Women Voters, all of us. I'm not opposed to anything like that, but I want to make sure that I know what's going to happen, just to say it's going to happen, and give us between now and June to come back and have the Tampa Bay Water staff and the city staff get together and make a presentation of what they come to agreement with. The public certainly not, and they're entitled to know what's going on. And if we do it today, they may never know what happened. So I want all clarity on the table, and I want it understood from the beginning. That's all, Madam Chair.
So again, as part of your issue, Jan, the SWIFT process?
The SWIFT process and at least a discussion of as far as the assignment of rights and what Tampa Bay Water's position would be if we were to move forward with the testing that we would be doing between now and June 2020. And with all due respect, of course, as Councilman Miranda's request, but if we could have the 10 minutes, I think maybe we might be able to provide you that more information on how we could move forward.
I personally think we should allow them some time and we can take a quick break and allow them time to come back to us. And so we'll stand in recess till, let's say, 11:25. We'll give you an extra 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got to go back.
If everyone will take their seats, we'll get started. I don't know who's controlling the mic, but it doesn't sound like the voice is coming across real strong. They need to turn the volume up a little bit. Thank you. Okay, so we were with the city of Tampa. And Jan, would you like to come forward?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you for the board's indulgence for the additional time to be able to speak to the various individuals. Again, the city would like to thank Councilwoman Rice and the board for entertaining this possibility to keep TAP and the project moving forward. We would agree to the deferral of the consideration of the proposed agreement and an MOU to the June 2020 board with, as the motion had stated, with a statement of support. I don't want to misspeak.
May I,
Go ahead.
may I clarify?
Councilwoman Rice?
So just to clarify, my statement was for the board to vote to direct to Tampa Bay Water staff to communicate support for the appropriations request of $1.6 million filed by Representative Toledo. If that legislative request, if that funding request does not pass, then the board would direct Tampa Bay Water staff to commit $1.6 million in co-funding. That is to replace what would have been maybe the state or the SWIFT-MUD's contribution. It's not to alleviate the city of Tampa's contribution, and thereby just to be clear, those test wells are done under the auspices of Tampa Bay Water. So they would, well, there's,
Oh,
And
now
this
wait,
is-
I
this-
think that's where the difference is going to be now. Okay, go ahead.
So to clarify, starting with the funding, if the state doesn't approve our request for legislation, then Tampa Bay Water would be committing to the 1.6 for the same activities that the city has applied to the district for we would be putting in our 1.6, it would be a total of 3.2. So it would be 1.6 from Tampa Bay Water and 1.6 from the city for the activities that are submitted to the application of SwiftMud. Now, we would be continuing on with the project as we would be proposing.
Madam Chair.
Well, I would like to hear her finish, please. Thank you.
So there wouldn't be any rights with regards to wells then being under Tampa Bay Water. The wells, that was part of the delay to make sure that we are all talking about what wells are there. So we are using our aquifer storage and recovery wells that are already in existence. For the next phase of it, we we were trying to confirm, excuse me, constructing recharge wells as part of the ongoing next phase of information. And so there wouldn't be water supply facility wells that would be being developed in the interim. If any permits are required for the ongoing information collection, they would be of a temporary nature, not of the duration for a water use permit.
Okay, Councilwoman Rice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to be really clear. I don't want my intentions characterized as support of the project.
Right.
I don't support the project. I'm trying to be fair because the city of Tampa has consistently said that the inability to get co-funding has caused problems. So what I'm willing to do is to commit the funds that you have requested for to do those studies you need to do. But I'm very firm on insisting, and I appreciate that you are supportive of what may be the board's willingness or desire to defer this discussion on the MOU until June of 2020.
And I will also like to make this statement. I would not like to defer the discussion. I would like the language to say that we will take action in June of 2020. We've been discussing it for 10 months. We're going to continue to discuss it going up to that point, but I think there's got to be a fish or cut bait on this. Are we going to say yes or no at what date? And when you said June of 2020, I assume that's what you were saying.
No, I wasn't saying that we would be approving this at a future time. I mean, there's just a lot of unknowns, a lot of reports, peer reviews, independent peer reviews of these reports. I'm not comfortable with agreeing to this in the future.
You mean agreeing to taking action one way or the other?
One way or the other, yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I want it to come back, and I'll make an amendment to your motion. I can pass the gavel that would say the motion to defer the item to, you have said previously, to a discussion in June of 2020, and I would like it to say defer the item to take action in June of 2020.
Final action.
Final action. I mean, we've all been working on this board, staff, everyone. We're going to get the reports done. If the reports aren't ready, obviously, we're not going to be ready in June of 2020. But if we are, I think, being fair again, there's got to be some point of certainty that they know they're going to be working towards.
Would the conditions of certainty be a peer review of all TAP reports? Because that'll probably be my next motion.
You mean the certainty for action in June of 2020 will be dependent upon,
In the interlocal agreement, section 6.05 on page 102, take one, pass it down, that we can hold in abeyance any board decisions about studies pending receipt of peer review reports and a feasibility analysis. So if we've got that in hand and the board votes to support invoking that peer review, then we would have the information we would need to take action at some future date, June 2020 or beyond.
and then I'd like to ask our attorney, does this scientific peer review apply to reuse water as well as, is it everything?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay. So you want the condition for action to be that the scientific peer reviews.
So, Madam Chair, I could restate my motion to move to defer the TAP MOU vote until June of 2020. And then it would be to invoke peer review of all TAP reports per the ILA and hold in abeyance board decisions about these studies until we are in receipt of peer review reports and the feasibility analysis.
Can someone, okay, Jan, did you want to make comment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I feel like we just added a condition to the original motion that is not able to be complied with. If we're moving forward with the actions in the next year, we would not have time for peer review for action to be taken in June of 2020. Peer review can take up to a year or more beyond any kinds of reports that are anticipated to be developed over the next years. So the city recognized with what they were supporting in the current MOU in front of you is that the board had the ability to reaffirm whether to continue that agreement beyond 2020 or not, because the city needed some certainty to be able to continue developing and investing its own money. But what you are requesting could easily add an additional year or two. So we would respectfully request that the original motion, with the clarification by the chair that action would be taken in June of 2020, would be what the city would request.
Or it could be as simple as action taken, like I don't think it will be the final vote, but action taken to move to the next phase, or action taken to, I mean, if we're saying peer reviews take 2 years, we can't get this done in.
We can't.
I mean, you've got to get all the data compiled and then send it to peers and have them review it. And just your scientific study, producing those results from the project and the analysis is going to take the good part of this whole next year. Is that correct?
We'd be moving forward with the next phase of the development of this project, all of which any stakeholders would be included. That was what the city's intent was all along. We just hadn't reached that point. We are at that point now. So I believe that we would be back in front of you in June of 2020 requesting final action by the board, absent some unforeseeable event that would have occurred, because we would have invested the money, as will you, if the legislature doesn't approve our request through that
Madam
point.
Chair?
Okay.
I want to be
Commissioner
careful
Starkey.
that we don't, that we make, sometimes the legislature funds at not the full amount. So we
Right.
want to say that we will fund up to, I think, 1.6 to make, because they
that
may
language.
fund half of that and then we fund the other half. So just want to suggest that.
I know we're going to put money in.
Yeah, don't tell them that we said that. Nobody.
Good point.
Public knowledge now.
Remember, they're pushing everything down to the locals. Okay, Councilwoman Rice, what's your pleasure?
Madam Chair, I mean, originally I'd stated that we defer the discussion until June of 2020. I mean, if there's a discussion and we put this on the agenda, I mean, anyone can make a motion to take action, so.
Correct.
I don't,
Just semantics.
yeah, it's semantics. I would not, I'm not going to phrase it in terms of anticipating a positive vote. We don't know. I imagine we would take a vote. I don't know what the vote would look like at that point. So I'm amenable to what you are concerned about, but I'd like to hear from my colleagues if you think having peer-reviewed studies that we are empowered to ask for under the interlocal agreement. I just handed it out. It doesn't take very long to read. I'd be curious to hear if anyone else thinks that's a reasonable step to take in advance of a project that can have such big consequences.
Commissioner Smith.
I think after we see more about the feasibility study, we'll, the results of that and have more input from the public and from experts who will be concerned about this, we'll know whether or not we want to proceed with the MOU without a peer review study. I mean, we'll know whether this is something that is lacking at that point that we really need to move forward. It may be that without the peer review, there's not enough support to move forward. So it could be a kind of it could go either way if you're not doing peer review. But
Good point.
I'm willing to move forward with that, with what we've got already on the floor.
Okay. Yes, Mayor?
I wouldn't necessarily rule out doing a peer review, but I think the motion as originally stated and cleaned up makes sense for us to deal with today as we get a little closer to that June date when we're expected to give Tampa a go, no go, or let's
Correct.
defer this out a little longer decision. If the results coming back in are not conclusive, then I would be supportive at that time of doing a peer review. But
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily mandate that we have to do peer review today.
And they may be done before June of next year.
That's correct.
Once you get the feasibility study
Once you get-
in,
right.
that's going to tell you what you need to do forward. So
Exactly.
I'm in agreement with that. So
Councilman Miranda, do you have any comments?
I agree with what the mayor just said and stated earlier.
Okay. So are we ready to move forward on the motion? We have a motion and a second by Commissioner Oakley.
Yeah.
Commissioner Evers?
Well, I guess, I thought today was going to be a discussion about whether or not we feel that Tampa Bay Water has the right to give up property rights or water producing rights that is given to the interlocal agreement covers that, so that we don't really, Tampa Bay Water itself can sell assets, but I don't know that we can sell the water rights production. So I, again, we can wait a year to do that and to come up with it. And if we have enough people that feel that the MOU is a justifiable, remember there was an effort to do something with the state that didn't work first time. So now we're coming up with an MOU to address this the best way we think we can, and a supermajority is required, but that's usually attached to the sale of water production assets that we own. Well, we don't own this to give it up. So I'm just concerned that, I'm going to go a year forward from now, and I'm quite frankly, I'm very uncomfortable with us making that decision as a Tampa Bay Water Board that should be relegated to our individual commissions who are actually party to the ILA. So that is going to continue to be my overriding concern, and I would like to have parallel discussions along the way about that, because I know our attorneys have tried to come up with this agreement, and again, I can't thank them enough for trying to do that, but I'm still uncomfortable with it. So again, I'm willing to go along with the agreement, that we'll look at it next year. As more skin gets in the game, so to speak, there's a momentum that starts to build that makes it more and more difficult for people to say no. So I just want to be fair to Tampa. So as long as everybody's thinking differently than I am, then I'm comfortable moving forward, I guess. So, but I want that stated for the record, that I have concern that we don't have the right to do it. So, thank you.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further comments from the city?
Could I just clarify? So the motion does not include the requirement for the peer review at this point?
That's correct.
Okay. And it does include that if, in the event that the state does not provide us with the money that was requested through the legislature, that Tampa Bay Water would then budget it for the provision to the city.
Up to
the
up to the 1.6, because the state may do a partial funding, as they are known to do. Okay. Any further comments on the motion? Yes,
And it's to replace what would be the state or SWIFT MUD piece, not the city of Tampa contribution.
Right.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Like sign opposed? Hurrah, like sign passed. Oh, my gosh.
Madam Chair?
It was good. And I do have a motion, Councilwoman Rice, sorry.
I would like to make a motion to direct staff to produce a summary of staff time and attorney billing records for everything related to TAP. We need to know what resources have been put into this so far. I think it would be helpful to know as we go forward. It was a motion.
Second.
Okay, could you restate the motion?
I move that the board directs Tampa Bay Water staff to produce a summary of staff time and attorney billing records for everything related to TAP.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Mr. Jordan, have you guys spent a lot of time on this?
Yes.
I guarantee you that.
Want to make sure. And I know our county attorney has also. Okay, great, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passed.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Eggers?
I just babbled on for about 3 minutes, probably just so I could hear myself talk, I guess, because I didn't hear anybody else say they agree or disagree with the ILA versus the MOU. And so I would like to make a motion that staff and our legal counsel continue to investigate the validity of the MOU as it relates to giving up water production rights. And I would like to just continue that kind of conversation because I still think we can't make a change to an agreement that we're not party to. And I've said that for a long time, and I've heard it again this morning from others. So I just want to throw that out as a motion to just continue to investigating that while we go down this path.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for our attorney to look at the water rights issue in regards to the interlocal agreement.
That would include the member government attorneys as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's water right production issues as opposed to water production assets, which is distinctly different. Okay, so.
Okay. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that pass.
Thank you.
And I'm going to pass the gavel. I have a motion to make. I asked for legal opinion. I was reading in the newspaper. I haven't looked at the ILA since 1998 when I was part of the team that helped approve the legislation. But I noticed in the Times editorial, they said made this statement, and it gives all member governments the exclusive right to develop, own, and/or operate all facilities for reclaimed water. That is in the interlocal agreement. So I would like to ask the county attorney to, with Mr. Dunbar, to please offer a legal opinion about member government's right to own, operate, what did I say? Own, develop, own, operate all facilities for reclaimed water.
Point of information, Mr. Dunbar is counsel to Tampa Bay Water, which is not a party to the interlocal agreement.
He's been acting as our legal counsel as we have moved along in this process, and I mean, that's fine. I would ask then our attorney to consult with Mr. Dunbar in relation to, because Mr. Dunbar was a part of developing the interlocal agreement, so he's very, very familiar with it. But I think this is an important statement in the interlocal agreement. I think it needs to be investigated and opined on so that we don't keep moving. We're just moving in uncharted territory. We really are. And we can turn a blind eye to reuse. Listen, you're either going to dump the water in the bay, which we all do now, or we're going to dump it in the aquifer and try and purify it and set up barriers and make it better. But I'm just saying, I want to know legally what we have the right to do.
We being who?
This board.
Well,
No,
no,
that's
but we
my-
can also use reclaimed on our grass and that kind of thing. too.
Correct.
You just said the two things that didn't include that.
Correct.
One of the things that more groups could do and therefore not have the water supply issues that they're thinking they have, so.
But
And
it's-
commit to infrastructure in their own community so that we're not losing water along the way. Those are
Correct.
those
So-
are big steps to save water.
Right, so that's my motion.
Second.
Thank you.
And if I could, I've been looking at, I'm new, but I've been trying to catch up with my homework, going through the ILA, word for word, phrase by phrase also. And I would very much like to have that clarified for us moving forward. I think things have changed since technologically and scientifically. We're able to do more with reclaimed water than we could at the time this was written. So it's, I think, important for us to look at what we can do. And I noticed in that phrase, and I don't have it in front of me, but I remember seeing that it referred to water with a capital W. And when you go back to the definition of water, that is very, very broadly defined, including drinking water in our ILA. So I'm no lawyer, I'm not an attorney. I would like all that really brought back and so we can all understand it moving forward. And thank you for your motion.
Clarification. It would be my intention to consult with the member government attorneys
Yes.
in reviewing that question.
Absolutely. Okay, you're
Yeah,
the
the
vice.
only thing I was going to ask, I think there was an attorney or two that was also present and part of the drafting of the agreement originally. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but I would hope that you might reach out to that person as well.
Actually, we have one present in the audience here today. Mr. Dunbar
Yes.
was part of the group that drafted the interlocal agreement. And bond counsel for Tampa Bay Water, Tom Giblin, was a second, and George Nickerson was a third. And we will attempt to reach out to all three.
I think that a sound legal opinion will help guide us as we move along. Okay, you're the chair. I made motion.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments before we take a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, that was a great discussion, great debate. Thank you, Councilwoman Rice, for your comments, for your I know you're diligently have worked on this and appreciate it. I do want to remind you all that we are $1.2 billion in debt, and we do not want to increase our rates. So any work we do on reclaim will help this region. And the Tampa Bay Water was formed as a regional authority to develop a regional solution. And we have to remember that we all have to work together to get to that point. So I think it just can't be counties pitting. I'm seeing some division, and I hope we can all get past that. Okay, back on the agenda, we are on I-1.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. Before we move on, could I ask a real quick question?
Sure.
From the motion that was approved by Councilwoman Rice, would you like your legislative team to weigh in with the legislature in favor of the appropriations?
I think that would be very wise.
I didn't hear what the end of it was.
He wants to engage the legislative team that we use and engage them to help with to help get the information out about the decision we just made on your motion.
What legislative team are we talking
Oh,
about?
we have a,
We use 3 people from our office, and you also have the Corcoran offices that work with us on appropriations matters. It is now, as I think Mr. Jordan indicated, the appropriations request by Representative Toledo has moved through the process as eligible potentially to be in the budget. Those discussions begin this week, and my question was, would you like us to weigh in favor of trying to get the legislature to include that funding in this year's budget?
I think that was part of the motion.
That was the motion.
I wanted to be sure. Thank you.
okay, we're on I-1. I think Chuck Harden, you're up.
I can make this really short, if you'd like.
Thank you.
Okay. Item I-1 is the award of the construction contract for the purchasing warehouse replacement building.
Move
And
approval.
staff is,
We do that. We had our board meetings too.
That's
We've
fine
gone
with
through
me.
a long discussion. It's good to have your items at the end
yeah.
of the agenda. So we do have do you guys want to hear his explanation?
I'm good with the motion.
I'm good with motion. Okay, and we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like, sign, opposed, show that pass. And we are now on J1. Are you going to have a really good, short presentation?
I have a really good presentation that's not as short as Mr. Cardin's, but about 10 minutes, if that would be the pleasure of the board.
Yeah, just kind of
I'll work
Seven.
through this quickly.
Seven.
Okay.
a little briefer.
Or no one's going to be here for the end part.
Some people have to leave, I know.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. I have some tremendously positive news to share with you, and I'm pleased to make a presentation to you on our permit recovery assessment plan. This is information only. I will not be asking for any board action at the end. Very quick history to put this into context. Prior to 1998, the West Coast Regional Water Supply Authority only had groundwater facilities. All the water we sent to you, the members, was from groundwater sources. The 11 well fields that I will mention in today's presentation are the 11 shown in green north of the Tampa Bay area. And it was concentrated high levels of groundwater pumping from these well fields that contributed to environmental stress on the well fields. Our oldest well field began production in 1931, and as our population rapidly grew, so did the demand for water. We reached a maximum pumping, an average annual quantity of 160 million gallons per day in the year 2000. Throughout the late 80s and 90s, this region struggled with an extended drought, and that was the same time period that demand and pumping were increasing. The drought and wellfield pumping together were the two key factors that caused environmental stress and damage in and around the well fields. And this included things like low or absent water levels, oxidation, loss of organic soils, tree fall, and change of plant species. These pictures show two extreme examples of environmental stress, but there were many similar instances documented throughout our region. In '98, we made a significant change to our structure. We developed a partnership agreement with the district to build alternative water supply sources. We brought them online successfully to give us an interconnected regional system with 3 completely different water sources. This has allowed us to reduce pumping, which was one of the 3 primary goals of the partnership agreement with the district. And last year, 2018, 37% of the water we delivered to you was from alternative sources. The original consolidated permit required phased reductions. We started at 158 million gallons a day, shown by one of the red bars, and we reduced to 121 and then to 90. Our compliance is the dark black line that is the 12-month moving average. So we're making sure that that stays below the red line to be in compliance. Month to month, pumpage can go higher. That's okay as long as it comes back down in the summer. Since January 2010, we've been well below the 90 MGD permit limit, and we've averaged about 80 million gallons a day for the last 8 or 9 years. That's a 50% reduction from our maximum in the year 2000. In response to this reduction in pumpage and a return to normal or above normal rainfall, we've seen water levels improve. This is the same wetland that I showed you before at the Starkey well field, and 10 years separate these 2 photographs, one before we cut back pumpage, and on the right after we cut back our pumpage substantially at the well field. Water levels are about 7 feet higher. Notably, both pictures were taken at the end of May, at the end of our dry season. This is another photograph of Lake Raleigh at the Cosme Odessa well field. And from 2002 until 2016, water levels have increased about 16 feet in this lake between the 2 photographs. These are not isolated examples of recovery. We've seen it throughout the Tampa Bay area, and we're documenting that as we go. The question that remains is, how can you quantify it? How do you know how much is recovered? And that's where our recovery assessment plan comes in. In order to renew our water use permit, the consolidated permit, in a couple of years, we have to complete a study that evaluates the recovery of lakes and wetlands that's due to our reduction in pumping. We have to determine if there's any remaining adverse impacts left associated with our pumpage, and if so, we have to figure out how to fix those. Key to our success has been a very close working relationship with the Water Management District, which has been willing to commit extraordinary time to meet with us over the last 8 years and has peer-reviewed all of our work to date. We began by developing a work plan and schedule that identified some specific goals. We had to define what area to investigate, what specific sites to look at, and develop methods to assess them. We agreed with the district that we would focus on lakes and wetlands since these are the most sensitive environmental features in our area. We also agreed to evaluate the recovery of water levels, not vegetation, because of the extremely long lag time in vegetation changes. We developed an area of investigation based on past, current, and future pumping levels at 90 MGD, and identified areas where our pumping at 90 might have a drawdown in the superficial aquifer that might continue to influence lakes and wetlands. Specifically, we identified 1,264 individual lakes and wetlands that are included in this study. We've been able to use the wealth of environmental data that we in the district have collected for decades, and we've agreed with the district on all the data sets, so at the end of the process, we're only discussing the results, not one data set versus another. In order to know if a site is recovered, we need or wanted to establish a scientific metric, a numeric metric of health for each type of system, so we know when recovery has been achieved. The district has already set levels for most lakes in the area and one type of wetlands. Working collaboratively with the district, we set standards or metrics of health for the other wetland types in our study. We've developed an extensive database and GIS application to allow us to categorize and look at all the data spatially. And we've established bins or categories for the sites that not only help us keep track of their status, but they guide our future work. The top two, never impacted or recovered, those are sites that fully meet their numeric scientific metric of health. There are a number of sites that are improved, not fully recovered, and many of the photographs I've shown you today of good wetlands, these are sites that are improved, not fully recovered. There will be a few that we can identify that may be continued impact, and those are the ones that will need to promote mitigative action for them. Very quickly, I'd like to show you the results, the preliminary results of our study. We submitted this to the Water Management District in December of last year, and the report is included in your board packet. We have the highest confidence in those sites where we have long-term water level and vegetation data, and 73% of those are either never impacted or recovered. 73% of the monitored wetlands have fully recovered as of the end of last year. Another 22% show considerable improvement, even though they're not quite at their metric. Lakes are very similar. 78% of them show that they meet their metric of recovery through the end of 2018. As expected, those sites that are unmonitored that fill out the remainder of the 1,200 sites, there's less confidence in the data, but we've developed methods of assessing the data that we have and the data that's nearby to make predictions of health for those sites. And about 2/3 of those appear to be recovered. In total, when we summarize all of the monitored and unmonitored sites, at least 2/3 of them are meeting their metric. We have additional year of data to analyze, so these results will likely change. It's good to note that only 1% or 8 specific sites appear to be continued impact by wellfield, and we've already started developing plans or implemented plans to address those remaining impacts. Even though we've made a lot of progress, there's still a lot of work that we have to do. We have a few sites that need to find a category or bin. We're reassessing all of them with another year's worth of hydrologic data. We're making sure that our metrics are robust and scientifically defensible, and we'll update our analysis with everything through the end of water year 2019. A final report of our findings will be developed and will be part of the water use permit application that we'll ask for your consideration in either June or August of the year 2020. With that, I'll be happy to entertain questions. And this is a wetland on the Starkey well field that, as nice as it looks, it's only a site that's improved, not fully recovered.
Looks good. Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, well, you said this was good news, and it is good news. I think that it's interesting that trying to figure out how to notify residents who are buying property about conditions that they have to deal with. In some instances, like if you have a lake that you abut, whether you own it or not, or a creek that goes behind your house, whether you own it or it's owned by the county or the city. And so I had a lot of folks that have said about this issue that they bought property when it was dry, not where their home is, but thought it was a different condition, and now it's obviously it's filled in. In some cases, they're very happy about it, and others they said, "Well, I thought I had drier property." So, I guess to that end, we're making a lot of progress. And probably, where would folks go to find this information out about a piece of property that they might be interested in buying?
The preliminary results that we have to date don't go down to the individual parcel level. Part of the final study that we have that we'll be producing in the next 12 to 14 months will put the reduction in pumpage, the recovery of the environment in context with the landscape. There are sites that we developed as well fields 40-plus years ago where there were no houses. Now there's houses immediately adjacent to them. So especially for some of the improved sites, how much improvement can that basin sustain without causing property issues for off-site landowners? Within a year, we'll have some results that will be presented on a spatial scale that could be narrowed down to the parcel level. So it's coming very soon.
But in any event, they could contact here to find out a general condition where the property they may be considering, but just a general area and what's going on.
And I would offer myself as the point of contact for the agency.
Thank you, Warren. Great work.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
To Commissioner Edgar's point, up in Pasco County, we try to encourage people, if you see cypress knees right outside the back door of the house you're looking at, you don't want to buy it. My wife and I were traveling along State Road 52 a week and a half ago, and she was marveling at the areas along State Road 52 that now have water in them, lakes and wetlands, cypress hummocks, that she had never seen with water in them. And she and I have been married now for 44 years, and she's been coming through that way for literally decades. So it is making a huge difference. And I guess by way of explanation, when I get passionate about what it is that Tampa Bay Water is doing and has done, it's because of the changes that I'm seeing in the ecology of Pasco County as we're returning the county back to what it used to have, which was a really good wetlands area. And that's a direct result of the work that this board has done in cooperating with all the member governments.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. That was refreshing. Great. Thank you, Warren. And we have no items in finance. Of course, we had the budget presentation already. And is there any other old business? Any other old business? And I need a motion for receive and file. Okay, motion. Do we have a second? Second. And we have a second. All in favor say aye for the receive and file. All opposed, show that pass. And any other business come before Tampa Bay Water. We are adjourned. Forgot. You will be receiving something from staff regarding Matt Jordan's evaluation. So just make sure you get it in a timely manner.
His what?